If we do not accept robotics, AI, and automation to be a part of healthcare, we will not be able to provide healthcare at the standards and also in the numbers and amounts that we are used to.
Welcome to Healthcare Perspectives, a podcast by Siemens Healthineers about medical breakthroughs with the power to improve lives everywhere. You've just heard Professor Ralf Bauer, radiologist and partner at RNS Joint Practice in Wiesbaden, Germany. Here, he makes his prediction about the future of automation in radiology. In this episode, Iwona Markuszewska, senior key expert for Humanizing AI at Siemens Healthineers, is joined by Professor Ralf Bauer, as well as Dr. Shivakumar Swamy, head and director of the Radiology Department, oncoradiologist consultant, and clinical director of the Department of Radiomics and Radiogenomics at HCG Cancer Care in Bangalore, India, and Dr. Yair Safriel, co-founder and chief medical officer at Pharmascan and MEC chair of radiology at Morton Plant Hospital Association in Clearwater, Florida.
Hi, I'm Iwona Markuszewska. Across the globe, radiology departments are grappling with a challenge. Imaging volumes are climbing, while the trained workforce needed to operate scanners is shrinking. Using AI-driven solutions, advanced automation in radiology promises easier access to care, faster diagnoses, and more efficient workflows, improving both the patient and the operator's experience. It is rapidly transforming the way medical imaging is performed, analyzed, and integrated into radiology workflows. The success of more automation and accelerated imaging relies strongly on intuitive and impactful user experience, or UX design. Effective UX is integral to ensuring that patients and healthcare professionals can use smart systems in a way that maintain trust and safety. The question is no longer whether high levels of automation will play a role in radiology. It is how to design it in a most understandable and supportive manner. The field of radiology has always been resource-intensive, but in recent years, a convergence of forces, including raising imaging demand, an aging population, and the shrinking pipeline of trained technologists has pushed the system towards a breaking point. Dr. Yair Safriel, radiology chair at Morton Plant Hospital Association in Florida, frames the challenge in stark terms.
The core challenge is the rise in imaging volume. Everyone is realizing now that that is the simplest, quickest, easiest way often to make a diagnosis. So 20, 30 years ago, if you came into the emergency room with right lower abdominal belly pain, they'd investigate you, they'd poke your belly, and we would take 20 to 30% of patients with a presumptive diagnosis of appendicitis to the surgery and discover that they actually didn't have appendicitis. It is no longer acceptable to have a presumptive diagnosis. And all of that came because of radiology. So this increased use of radiology is creating a lot of pressure on the radiology system. The equipment availability, the hours, but most importantly, the people. Because the people is the hardest constraint to alleviate. You can't just make more of them.
The result is that the machines may sit unused in clinics because no radiographers can be found to cover longer opening hours.
That's our challenge. Sometimes you can't use your equipment to the maximum amount of hours that you want. If you can't find an evening technologist, you have to close the center for that time. You might not be able to find a weekend technologist. So the machine is there, the center is potentially paying rent and lease on the machine, but it's standing idle because we have no staff.
Just outside of Frankfurt, Germany, radiologist Professor Ralf Bauer sees the same dynamics and identifies the technologist shortage as the single most pressing issue his practice faces.
The most important challenge we are already facing and will be facing in the next 10 and 20 years is definitely the shortage of skilled personnel. That is the number one issue we have currently in Germany. radiology is somewhat of an ideal field to start automating processes. We need to start also working on automating the processes of actually acquiring the images. You can also automate processes, for instance, while the patients are in the waiting room. You can educate them with video clips, with audio-visual guidance. This is actually the very relevant problem because these medical technologists who actually run our scanners and acquire the images for the radiologists to read them, this is the group that we are actually facing the biggest shortage in.
At HCG Cancer Care in Bangalore, Dr. Sivakumar Swamy offers a different aspect of the lack of qualified radiographers. The challenge isn't a shortage of people, it's ensuring that those who are available are trained to the standard of clinical excellence required.
I see the technologists as one of the major challenges. Of course, in India, we don't have a deficiency of technologists, but then the challenge remains in how trained are they. With Western population, the limitation is number of technologists available around the clock. Here in India, it's possible that we have many people who can work, but they should be trained very well in performing these scans.
In all three settings, a cancer center in Bangalore, an outpatient imaging chain in Frankfurt, a health system in the southeastern US, the math points in the same direction: more volume, fewer qualified hands, and scanners that require a high degree of manual operation, at least until now. As automation can relieve the issue, it needs to be first assessed which exams best qualify for it. For Professor Ralf Bauer, CT is the natural entry point.
A CT scan is highly standardized. Latest generation CT machines have all sorts of sensors and biometric sensors. They use cameras for positioning. You have audio-visual guidance, for instance, already there installed. If you want to pick some dedicated CT examinations, this will, of course, be non-contrast enhanced scans. I'm thinking about chest CT. Chest CTs mostly are conducted without intravenous contrast administrations. Unenhanced CT scans of the paranasal sinuses, for instance. Any bone scan, any head CT.
Non-contrast CT scans seem to be a feasible goal for automation.
Anything without intravenous contrast, there should not be any positioning issues at all. These types of examinations account for a large number of CT scans, not only in our setting, but also in my experience worldwide. So if you could focus on all of these unenhanced CT scans, I think that would be a big relief for the workflow.
On the MRI side, Sivakumar Swamy draws a similar distinction. Start with non-contrast, highly standardized protocols for a healthier population. High volume of those scans should be a clear selection criteria.
Spine MRs are something which we can easily do. 90% of the times it's the degenerative or the disc herniation related to any minor injury. Then routine brain MRs just to rule out any structural cause or any abnormality. Most of the situations you see headaches, it could be a simple migraine or a cluster headache. We know that there's definitely nothing which is really causing them, but it's mandatory that you rule out something. Sports injuries are quite common. MR is the modality. I think knee, shoulder, joints, where you just have to make them individual, lie down, and very quickly, 15-20 minutes, your scan is done. That's it. All that they have to do is just lie down and keep the extremity in a prescribed position. That's it. It's a completely protocol driven. You're looking at ligaments, menisci, and the bone marrow is then just that. So these are some of the things can be easily performed. So that will bring down the waiting period for most of the patient. The individuals who are really sick can be pushed to the hospital scenarios where they will need continuous monitoring.
Achieving high levels of automation in imaging isn't only about what happens inside the gantry. The workflow before and after the scan, scheduling, registration, preparation, quality assurance, is equally applicable and desired. For Shivakumar Swami, the preparation for the imaging exam begins well before the patient arrives.
Training is something which helps us a lot. You train them as much as possible, give them a simulator. First, it should be an auto registration like kiosk machine. They enter their details, then they enter the symptoms, what they have. If they have a prescription, they should put it in the kiosk that it will scan and it will pick up those important clinical findings what the clinician would have mentioned. So what is the scan that has to be done? And then the whole planning happens outside the MR gantry and the console.
Ralf Bauer points to the same logic already at work in a patient context. Booking a medical appointment is now as simple as ordering a coffee. Actually, ordering a coffee nowadays can be more complex than booking a medical appointment.
In Germany, there is an app. People, they sit on the couch maybe, they are on the subway and they book their medical appointment with you. It's just very convenient. It's right there where you need it, when you need it. At the beginning, everyone was very skeptical. Only young people who grew up with handheld devices would use this. But since speaking from practice, we see that this is not true. So many older people, retired people, use this app to get their appointment.
A clear vision already exists. The task is connecting singular process steps into a seamless end-to-end experience. A fully automated scanner is a midterm step. In the near future, it might be a bit more nuanced but easily achievable, using AI not to replace the technologist, but to catch errors in real time and to ensure that the requirements for reading and reporting are met.
The first step to autonomous scanning, and the most important step, is to be able to make sure that we have safety and quality assurance. And for that, what we need is what's called a closed loop system, something that takes the information, does the scan, but then analyzes the scan and suggests improvements. And that's critical in outpatient because let's say you do a scan and it's not of good quality, something happened. Getting the patient back is really hard. They can't come back tomorrow because they just took an hour off work. Maybe they traveled. You get one shot. The scan you get has to be good enough.
This quality loop has a direct operational payoff too. Fewer rescans, stable and plannable throughput, and better data for radiologists to work with.
You're doing a scan, and the scan has something that isn't optimal about it. If the computer can tell you that right there, you can fix it immediately. That's the first step to automation. Right there, we're reducing callbacks. You're improving the throughput. You're improving everything.
Beyond quality checks, AI also enables something that even a skilled human technologist needs longer for: knowing everything about the patient before they get on the table.
What this automation can do is improve the scan we're going to get by knowing what this patient had before. So a tech right now, for the most part, they see a patient, they see a prescription, a script from a physician saying CT scan chest. But a computer can match exactly the parameters we did before to now so that the comparison is like with like. It can also then adjust to more specific protocols for specific diseases because it knows what this patient has. It knows that this patient might have some sort of syndrome underlying the cancer and make specific adjustments to the scan to better evaluate that. That's the key to the human interface where we're going in the future.
In Yair Safriel's vision, the scanner becomes a system that knows the patient, adapts the exam parameters to patient condition, executes the scan, and then confirms that what it produced meets the standard, before the patient even leaves the building.
The boundary is determined by safety. And I think that boundary will get pushed back as we get safer and safer. And the scanner will know, based on your medical record, which is already all digitized, that you need a specific chest scan. It will set those parameters. It will see where you are in space within the scan. It will adjust for that. That's that closed loop. It knows what it needs to do. It sees, It sees if there's any gap between what it needs to do and where things are and adjusts. And then it does the scan. And then it looks at it again, make sure that the scan conforms to our basic quality guidelines, and then tells you to go home.
For Shivakumaraswamy, the protocol-driven nature of many common MRI exams means this vision is already within reach. As long as the exam preparation of the patient is handled in an excellent manner and the patient is monitored properly.
All that training process has to end before they get into the gantry. So once they are inside the gantry, it is just at the click of a button, the scan should automatically start. Of course, there are challenges in placing. You still need some personnel who will help them to put on the head coil. Once everything is set, it's the protocol driven and somebody can remotely sit and monitor the whole process without any problem. Once they get into the gantry, we have to make it mandatory that their vitals has to be monitored, irrespective of the patient condition, because you are completely managing remotely. But on the protocol side, the AI will run the scan.
Even the most technically robust automation system will fail if patients don't trust it. In healthcare, trust doesn't emerge just because the system is accurate or efficient. It has to be designed deliberately, carefully, and with people at the center. When we talk about automation in radiology, the conversation often starts with technology. What AI can do, what can be automated, what can be accelerated. But the real question is how automation shows up for the people who experience it. Patients, technologists, and clinicians alike. A human-centered approach means designing automation around needs and moments of uncertainty. It means understanding where patients feel vulnerable, where professionals need clarity and control, and where technology should step back instead of stepping in. The user experience, from the first appointment reminder, through preparation and guidance, to the moment the scanner table slides in, is where automation either succeeds or fails.
When anyone walks into a hospital, into a clinic, you want to feel like these people are taking care of you. You are safe in their hands. It's kind of like walking into an autonomous car. You want to feel like I'm safe here. But in healthcare, it's one level above. You want to feel like you're being taken care of.
Automation, done right, doesn't diminish the sense of care. It amplifies it. The person assisting the patient is equipped with unprecedented technology in the backstage, and time just gained through this technology to smile more to the patient.
The person who's in front of you is not just a person at some outpatient facility. This person is backed up by incredible computing power and people standing somewhere else ready to help him, give him advice, feed in about your case at any time. Years and years ago, we ran a practice that had outpatient centers in all far and wide places. But everything we channeled back to a certain core group of highly trained subspecialists way before that was fashionable. And what we told everyone, you want to come to us because with us, you're always going to get the super expert. And that is what AI can do for you, that you can walk into your local clinic, but the care is not local, the care is international. But it is tailored back to you. And that is the key to automation.
Ralf Bauer sees the same journey already playing out in the way travelers interact with check-in kiosks at airports, and believes healthcare will follow the same arc.
I always compare medicine with the whole flight industry. What happened even like 15 years ago was that all of a sudden we saw self-check-in at airports. Everybody would agree that the level of safety at airports is probably amongst the highest we know. I do think that we have huge opportunities to go that way also in medicine. So we have a lot of processes that are just there to make sure the patient has shown up at the front desk, to identify the patient, to put the patient in a waiting room, to have a patient fill out some forms that are required to acquire or conduct a safe scan. But this can also be done on a machine automatically, or it could be done by the patient. with assistance through either maybe artificial intelligence or just like guiding you through the whole waiting and preparation process.
Yair Safriel maps out exactly how that trust-building sequence works in practice. A journey of small, successful moments that each lower the threshold for the next.
A patient walks into a clinic and there's a kiosk, there was a screen. It's kind of when you go to check in at an airline counter. You can go and stand in a long line to see an agent, or you can just print out your own boarding pass at that kiosk. So I think that for a lot of people, that concept is already there, to be a user, but they're not used to it in the healthcare environment. What's going to happen over time is you're going to start seeing a gradual implementation, where there's going to be, you can go to the kiosk or you can go to the human. So next time they walk in, they're going to go straight to the terminal. So when they get to the dressing room, they've just had a positive experience. They're going to be much more amenable if they have suddenly a question. When they get into the scanner, everything feels good, everything has gone smoothly. You have built up trust and confidence.
The UX design principle that emerges is clear. Simplicity above all.
User interface is critical to gain acceptance with the user. So you need to define a user interface that is able to deliver the message and get the preparation of a patient done efficiently in a very clear way. Keep it simple. This is, I think, the most important thing.
And the things that patients mostly struggle with during the imaging process are surprisingly mundane and entirely solvable.
The thing people struggle the most with at a CT scan is like how to get undressed. People just do not really know what parts of your clothes to put off, or like wearing necklaces, earrings, glasses, watches. I think this is the biggest obstacle, to just make clear what they need to leave in the cabin, what parts of your clothes to undress. The next thing will be the correct positioning, because what we have experienced is that patients are afraid to damage the machine or do something wrong. The way they lay down on the table, what to do with their arms. I think this needs to be very clearly pointed out in order to avoid mistakes, but also in order to make the patients comfortable with a self-scan process.
Simulation and gamification before the scan can go a long way toward making the experience feel familiar.
You can have an app-based training program. Before they come to the gantry or while sitting at home, they can actually go through the whole process of MR that they are going to experience. Beforehand, you put them into an actual gantry. You can actually make them lie down on a simulator, like an F1 car simulator or a pilot simulator. There are many such things available in shopping malls as well, especially in India. So I think that makes them aware of what the whole process is about. You have to make it look like a fun exercise before they get into actual gantry.
Progress in any field rarely happens through a single leap. It happens through demonstration, iteration, and gradual accumulation of evidence. Regulatory and cultural hurdles ahead are clear, but equally clear is the trajectory of the field. In Germany, Ralf Bauer's practice operates under some of the strictest radiation protection laws in the world. Laws that currently placed trained personnel at the center of every scanning decision. But even there, he sees opportunity to argue for re-evaluation in light of the staffing crisis.
In Germany, we have a very strict radiation protection law. This regulation puts skilled and dedicatedly trained personnel in the center of all decisions. But the thing is, the shortage of qualified personnel opens the door to a shortage of supply of medicine in general. So we are all facing sort of like a turning point where it's either stick with the old ways and accept that there will be nobody there for a 24/7 medical emergency service, because of the strict laws. Or maybe think about how could we adapt these laws? How could we maybe open up for automation? How could we actually benefit from automation? How could we relieve our scarce source of radiation technologists, for instance? I think this is a process we have to get started with. You have to show what is possible. You have to focus also on how patients feel during the process. Make sure that they are comfortable with an automated workflow. Show to the authorities that the way we're thinking of is a safe way for the patient, but also a safe way for healthcare in the future in general. Because if we do not accept robotics, AI, and automation to be a part of healthcare, we will not be able to provide healthcare at the standards and also in the numbers and amounts that we are used to it.
For Shivakumar Swamy, the path forward is built on, just as in any good design practice, evidence and constant iteration. By boldly implementing initial concepts and learning from usage patterns, a meaningful and scalable solution will emerge.
If we are serious, we have to start somewhere. At least we will know whether this is going to work or not. But this is going to work for sure. I think probably we can offer these scans on a holiday or a Sunday. If somebody wants to get it done, why not? You can't afford to have a technologist sitting all the time, but you know that this can be managed remotely. You can offer them. So 10 years down the line, I think most of the routine scans can be performed. When we start at some point, you will know that what are the shortcomings, what are the limitations that we are facing, where to improve on that.
Ralf Bauer also sees the power of adoption for final full automation in implementing iterative improvements.
My idea of becoming autonomous in radiology is like we will not see like that deadline. There won't be a certain date after which all the scanners will be fully automated. Things will blend in. If we offer a self-check-in, self-scanning time slot, I think there will be many patients that are curious enough and confident enough to try that alternative way. Of course, now we will have a lot of personnel supporting them, jump in at any time of the process to assist or to stop. But I think it's the same as it's ever been with technical evolutions. It'll be there. People will be aware of it. People will start using it. And that's just normal.
Automation won't just relieve the pressure on the healthcare system. It will give healthcare professionals back something they have been slowly losing: the time to be truly present for and with the people in their care.
When we see ever increasing numbers of scans, we also see increasing numbers of patients that do not really require types of examinations, that do not really need a trained person to conduct them. What is more sophisticated is doing CT angiographies, ECG-guided CT scans, CT of the heart, some dedicated perfusion CTs with stroke imaging or with oncology. We should actually use this very precious time of our skilled workers to focus on these cases that actually need the most of our knowledge. When we will be able to apply automated processes to our routine, we will gain some time or more time from our RTs and doctors to focus on personal interaction with our patients, to find time to focus on the one scan that makes a difference. I think this will be a big relief for our teams.
Across 3 continents and 3 very different healthcare systems, the conversation around AI and human centricity in radiology arrives at the same place. The question has shifted from whether high-level automation is possible to how it should be designed, introduced, and scaled for best adoption. The starting points are clear: highly standardized, non-contrast exams, CTs of the chest, head, and sinuses, spine MRI, joint MRI, represent a traceable first wave. The workflow surrounding the scanners, registration, patient preparation, can be automated in steps, beginning today. Most importantly, in each step, the goal is not to remove the human, but to free them for the work that only humans can do. The path forward will require regulators, technologists, radiologists, and patients to move together. But the AI tools and design principles to begin that journey are already at hand, and the need has never been more urgent.
We're going to make so many scans because it's going to be easier for people to get scans. There are parts of the world where people have a 2-week wait list for an MR without having to travel 60, 50 miles. And there are places in the world where you could wait 2-3 months. With automation, that is the first thing that we're going to resolve.
You have been listening to Healthcare Perspectives, a podcast by Siemens Healthineers. We pioneer breakthroughs in healthcare for everyone, everywhere, sustainably. Subscribe to us and always get the latest episode in your podcast feed. Or visit siemens-healthineers.com/podcast for more. The intro and ending segment of this episode contain AI-generated audio. The opinions expressed by the guests and contributors in this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Siemens Healthineers. The statements by Siemens Healthineers customers in this podcast are based on results that were achieved in the customer's unique setting. Because there is no typical hospital or laboratory and many variables exist, e.g., hospital size, samples mix, case mix, level of IT and/or automation adoption. There can be no guarantee that other customers will achieve the same results. This podcast describes possible future ideas and concepts. It is not intended to describe specific performance and/or safety characteristics of currently planned or future products. Future realization and availability cannot be guaranteed.